good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to all of you, wherever you are joining from. So a very warm welcome to the event today. My name is Hang Tu Wu, and I'm a Senior Financial Sector Specialist from the World Bank's Crisis and Disaster Risk Finance Program. And I will be the moderator for the session today, and thank you for joining us. And apologize for the delay due to some busy schedule of the UR day. But I hope that our speaker will be able to stay with us until the end. So over the past few years, the bank has been supporting ASEAN countries to establish the Southeast Asia Disaster Risk Insurance Facility, which aims to strengthen financial resilience of the countries in the region against disaster and climate shocks. And earlier this year, SEADRIF Insurance Company has provided an insurance coverage to the government of Laos PDR. So the session of today for us is to disseminate the insights and also the lessons learned from the innovative modeling work completed as part of the Southeast Asia Disaster Risk Insurance offering to Laos, the initial flood products. And in addition, the session will also offer some information to inform broader activities for disaster risk management, climate analytics, and also rapid post-event impact assessment. So in this session, the speakers will be from the SEADRIF Insurance Company, along with private sector companies that work together on this successful placement. And they will show how new technologies enable the countries to access insurance market for financial resilience. And then along with additional experts in this space, we will discuss more of the advancements which can support a better understanding of risk and also improve financial resilience. I'd like to thank all the speakers for joining the session today and look forward to the exciting presentations and discussion. Now, without further ado, I'd like to invite, Ms. So Hoon Kwek, the chairperson of SEADRIF Board of Directors from the SEADRIF Insurance Company, to give some initial, some remarks about the SEADRIF Insurance Company and also the first product offered to the Lao PDR government. Over to you, Ms. So Hoon Kwek. Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome to this session on innovations in risk finance.
The background to the setting up of SEADRIF Insurance and our first product.
From World Bank report, we know that global asset losses from disasters reach an average of more than $300 billion a year. Natural disasters force about 26 million people back into poverty every year. And in low-income nations, 90% of disaster losses are uninsured. Nearer to home, we have ASEAN, the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, with 11 countries, having a population of more than 650 million. Frequent disasters are experienced in ASEAN countries, including floods, tropical storms, droughts, earthquakes, and tsunamis. Climate change increases the frequency and intensity of extreme weather events. When a disaster strikes, without planning, a government reacts by channeling funds to rescue and relief efforts. These are funds intended for longer-term investments to build infrastructure, example, health and education systems. Natural disasters hit countries at different stages of growth differently. For less developed countries, when hit by natural disasters, rural populations struggle to even meet daily necessities of life. With pre-planning for natural disasters, governments can respond to natural disasters in proactive ways. The solution is SEADRIF Initiative. This is a regional platform that provides participating countries in ASEAN with advisory, financial solutions, and technical advice to increase countries' preparedness, resilience, and cooperation in response to climate and disaster risks. SEADRIF takes the crisis out of disasters by developing and implementing financial solutions that arranges funds before a disaster even occurs, so that countries can embark on recovery and reconstruction activities sooner. With a well-designed initiative, SEADRIF can count on significant support from donors and international partners. All ASEAN plus 3 countries can join SEADRIF, and become members. There are 7 member countries as shown in the slide. Singapore and Japan are donors, and 1 more ASEAN country will be joining SEADRIF shortly. The World Bank is a key partner of SEADRIF. As the lead technical advisor, it provides analytical and advisory services. The World Bank has supported the SEADRIF initiative since inception. This is a visual picture of SEADRIF initiative. Note that there are benefits for ASEAN countries such as access to public goods, flood risk monitoring tool and assessment model backed by satellite technology, international support including donor financing and technical assistance, builds regional leadership as a facility established and owned by ASEAN plus 3 countries. This chart shows the scope of SEADRIF initiative that develops programs and products that are tailored to each country's needs and financial goals. Examples are flood risk model, insurance market development, and capacity building. You have seen where SEADRIF Insurance is within the SEADRIF initiative. Hence, the purpose of SEADRIF Insurance is to provide disaster risk financing and insurance products to participating countries, to provide fast payout to support immediate relief and early recovery from disaster events, and provide access to private capital markets, reinsurance, through regional risk pooling and a collective approach to markets. SEADRIF Insurance was incorporated in Singapore in April 2019. It is licensed as a general insurance company under the MAS. It is fully owned by SEADRIF member countries and conducts its operations according to its constitution and SEADRIF Operations Manual adopted by member countries. This slide shows the 4-tier structure of SEADRIF Insurance. At the highest level, there is the SEADRIF Trust, where its members provide governance and strategic direction for the SEADRIF initiative. SEADRIF establishes subtrusts for subgroups of member countries to manage specific initiatives. For example, Subtrust A was created for the first insurance product to provide cover to Lao PDR. Trustee holds the legal title to the assets of the trust, and the insurance company, licensed under MAS, provides insurance coverage to its policyholders. We also have the business partners, calculation agent, JBA risk management, reinsurance broker Guy Carpenter, reinsurers, there is a panel of reinsurers led by New Re, and a manager that provides the CE, Chief Executive Nominee, and actuarial accounting and operations services. The company is governed by a board appointed by members of Subtrust A, and they are Hao Soo Hoon, George McGee, and Gary Rinsart. Management company is Willis Towers Watson. Lead technical advisor is the World Bank, and the company is funded by Japan Ministry of Finance and the MAS. Lao PDR is a landlocked country with a rugged terrain made up of mountainous areas interspersed with plains and plateaus. It is susceptible to many hazards such as flooding from the Mekong River, drought, landslide, and also earthquake. In March 2020, Lao requested flood risk cover. The policy was issued on 1st of February 2021. SEADRIF Insurance is glad to be able to support Laos National Disaster Management Program by providing, through insurance, pre-funding for disaster relief and recovery activities when the insured event arises. The flood risk product has 2 components, parametric and finite. For the parametric component, payout amount is based on severity of the event. A medium event provides a payout of 40% of the annual total coverage, and a severe event triggers 100% payout. The severity of an event is calculated based on the estimated number of people who live in areas flooded by at least 25 cm of water over a 21-day aggregate. Medium is for 1 in 8 event affecting more than 130,000 persons, and severe is for a 1 in 20 event affecting more than 210,000 people. Finite component pays for floods that do not meet the minimum threshold for a parametric payout. It has an aggregate limit over the 3-year policy duration, allowing for support and flexibility no matter the experience. At the core of the flood risk product is the flood risk monitoring tool that enables the company to calculate if a payout has been triggered. It also serves as a public good to provide governments with rapid, reliable, and relevant information to make more informed decisions before, during, and in the aftermath of a flood. The tool has 2 key functions: help assess the probabilities of a flood event so SEADRIF can price the insurance product, including how often a payout is expected to occur and hence how much premium to charge. To continuously monitor the situation on the ground and determine if a flood is occurring and if so, how severe it is. The 2 data sources are from satellite data, meteorological data, and Laos hydrological history to make near real-time flood impact assessments like estimated water levels, flood maps, and an estimate of the number of people affected. Questions can then be answered. Which areas are flooded? How many people may be affected? And how should an insurance payout be expected? I have shared with you a brief of the insurance company and the insurance product. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sohoon, for your presentation. Moving on to the next one, I'd like to invite Paul Mazie. He's a risk modeling consultant at JBA Risk Management. He's also the calculation agent for SEADRIF. And Paul will share some of his insights into the technical aspect of the first SEADRIF flood model and how the calculation, the impact is performed. Paul, I'd like to invite you to take the floor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I should also
Hello,
have
my name is Paul Mazie and I work for JBA Risk Management, and I'm going to present a brief overview of the flood monitoring system that's been put in place for SEADRIF. This has been supported by Chima and Deltares, who have provided the bulk of the technical work in terms of the modelling and also the use of satellite data. So to give you a little bit of context for what we're talking about here, over the last 2 or 3 years, Chima and Deltares have done a lot of work to understand the flood context within 3 countries in Southeast Asia, Laos, Myanmar and Cambodia, leading up to operational implementation of the SEADRIF system in Laos for the current season, so that's 2021 to 22. We've had a lot of help and support through this process from the World Bank, the SEADRIF Insurance Company, and also the reinsurers and other parties, so thank you to them. The system itself, the technical implementation, has 3 components. There is a risk profiler, which is a static database of flood events with flood extents and numbers of people affected. We then have the near real-time analyzer, which is the daily monitoring tool based on modelled and satellite data. And this information is presented through a web interface, which is then accessible to end users, and I will provide a demo of that web interface at the end of this presentation. So to dig in a little bit deeper to those two components, the risk profiler is a database of pre-simulated flood impact scenarios. And the reason for taking this approach is that whilst it's possible to run the modelling on a daily basis in the time available, when the system was first set up, the ability to link that to a catastrophe model and actually model the impacts of the flooding rather than just the flood extent was not possible in the time that was available to do that, to make it feasible to use. So instead, the area of interest has been broken up into smaller areas, and each of these has been associated with a particular flood driver. So for example, a location that is mostly dominated by the Mekong River, say, will be associated a flood driver that is the river flood level, and that will be what will be used to determine the level of flooding in that area. Those are then matched to the database to identify the number of people that will be affected in that area, and then that impact is then summed up over all the areas that are expected to be affected. That area affected is determined using the daily modelling from Deltares, which models the river flooding across the whole region, and that also by satellite data that's provided through a system that CHIMA set up called SEADRIF. So that combination of data is weighted to determine a flood extent for each area based on those two sources. The advantage of the modelling is that it is always available, it runs routinely. The advantage of the satellite data is it can provide you with additional quality in terms of ground truth. It can see through cloud cover, but it is limited in its availability depending on when the satellite is passing the area of interest. So we carry out this process to weight the two sources of data and then match to the nearest event in the catalogue of pre-simulated events to determine the number of people affected on a daily basis. So we've worked to implement this system as of February 2021 for Laos. This involved setting up the system to run routinely and to identify whether the trigger levels for the parametric scheme have been triggered, and that's over a 21-day period. So for the country, there are 2 trigger levels of number of people affected that are being monitored. To do this, we've put in place what's called a post-event loss calculation. So this is a detailed process that's been put in place that describes the different actions that need to be taken, particularly in the event of any problems with the system or any missing data. And then this and also the code from the system is placed into escrow so that there is independent guarantee that the same process will be followed in each event, and the communications around that event will be followed. So this includes alerts through email with a particular form so that everyone understands exactly where we're at with a particular event. The system itself is being monitored 24/7 by CHIMA for any issues and also for alerting around particular events. When users come to the website, the first thing they're presented with is the login screen, as you can see here. And once a user has logged in, they would come to this screen, which gives a map of the country of interest. And on the left-hand side, you can see the information about the 2 levels of trigger for this particular scheme. This map doesn't show any flooding because this is an up-to-date screenshot of the current situation. But if you go to the date entry near the top left of the screen, then this is the function that allows you to select different past data from the system. So this is the screen that users would then see. Allows the user to click through to any any month, and then below that any particular date on which they wish to look at the flood impact numbers. And I've selected an example here, which is for June of this year, when the flood impact value was around 112,000, which is not that far below the trigger threshold for this country. And you can see the areas at highest risk highlighted on the map in terms of the darker orange and then red colours. Matching that down the left hand side are the numbers for each of the different districts, the numbers of people affected based on the flood modelling and satellite data method that I've described. You can also expand that list on the left hand side that you'll see there to show numbers for all of the districts, and you can also obviously get that by hovering over the map. The tool also provides a view of the risk profile information, essentially an exceedance probability curve for the country of interest. So here you can see on the graph the two thresholds and also a line which is based on some historic events, and then you can see where the position of that current event is. So this 112,000 people as the orange dot, so you can see how that sits just below that threshold. This page also gives some values for previous historic events on the right hand side there. Finally, there are a number of different selections can be made on the front screen to look at the different components of the flood data. So along the bottom there you'll see some circles, and this allows you to look at either the flood map from the modelling, which is what you can see here, showing the blue areas in relation to the outlines in red of the areas that are most affected, and then you can also look at the Earth observation data, the satellite data, and you can produce a map of the two overlapped, showing you the combined effect of those two sources of data. And there's also a user guide and then the ability to download the data from the website as well, which can be useful to see exactly what the breakdown of numbers are.
Thank you very much, Paul, for the presentation. So for the next one, I'd like to introduce Apur Dabrov. He's a Senior Vice President at Guy Carpenter. Guy Carpenter was the appointed broker for SEADRIF, and who also led the first reinsurance placement for SEADRIF insurance coverage. Apur, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thanks, Sang, and thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, everyone. Thanks a lot for this session. Glad to be here. I'm doing it live. It's not pre-recorded. So because we are brokers, we like to talk to the live audience. So that's it. So actually in this session, I'll try to provide you an overview of our experience when we were placing this product into the market, and why our interaction with World Bank, SEADRIF, and the market by itself. So what I'll be touching upon is the 4 key points actually. So the first one, how was the product? And we find this to be a very innovative first generation product as a broker, and from the experience from the market as well. And this product was developed keeping SEADRIF's goal in mind. It was developed for a region where the insurance market in general is underdeveloped, with very low insurance penetration. The data, if you want to talk about the DM data, the gauge data, the population data, is quite limited to develop a very nice 5-star model in the first go. Hence, the model development required a phased approach. In the first instance, the solution required a blending of several data sources, techniques, and methodology to build a reasonably acceptable model. The overall approach, I believe, was taken that the model fits the purpose, and the best possible solutions available at the time of development were used. Of course, the arguments can be made whether this approach is better than that approach. And that's exactly the reason I'm saying that it's a first generation product. And the sessions like this and the others are quite useful, where we can discuss how we can transition into a next generation product. My second point, the interpretation of the model and model results were quite critical in the placement process. After getting the flavor of the products and its design, as an intermediary, it became apparent for us to have a good understanding of this product, triggers, results, along with some of the uncertainties and the discrepancies which existed in the model, because these are very critical for our discussion with the market. As a first generation model, these uncertainties are expected and in journal accepted also, as long as it's transparently conveyed. The third point was the reinsurers' reactions or the willingness to accept this risk or accept this model. In journal, the reinsurers were very keen to review the concept and the product. Yes, they had several questions. In fact, we had a long list. There's a massive database of their questions, but all of them are quite valid, technical, and practical, and have practical implications actually. In fact, whenever we are trying to embark into the journey to develop a new product or enhance this product, we should be revisiting those questions because those are quite relevant for the purpose we are building this product. Reinsurers in general were very patient in the whole process. At the same time, World Bank, SEADRIF, the modeling partners, and the agencies were extremely helpful in answering the queries from the reinsurers and making the journey as smooth as possible. The last point, but one of the most important point, is the future products. The lesson learned during the design, development, and the delivery of the current product would be quite useful in developing any future products. Apart from just using the newer technologies and the newer approaches in the modeling, it is quite important for us to understand how best the process can be laid out from the origination of the idea to the delivery of the product. It requires a more structured approach than a siloed approach. The products and solutions could be developed with just not the technical partners' involvement, but with the commercial partners' involvement as well, who would understand the nuances of the insurance markets, their requirements, and their acceptance. What it will do is it will lead to an end-to-end viable solutions or the product. For example, the latest technologies available may not be very well accepted by the market because it's possible that they may not be very well tested and validated for the historical events. And therefore, approach may require a balancing where a slightly older approach with more testing and validation data is available. And this could be more acceptable for a transaction like this. So whenever we are developing these future products, we have to take into account all that aspects, and so that we can come up with a solution which is innovatively and which is more innovative, which is using the latest technology, but at the same time is acceptable by the markets as well. As a broker, as an intermediary, that's what we have felt and during this whole process. With this, I will end and give it back to Hank, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Paul. It's very insightful, especially I know that we have gone, the broker, the company, and also, the supporting team have gone through it.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you for having me here today, this evening, at the Understanding Risk Asia 2021. Really happy to be sharing with you here some of our thoughts and reflections on the HADR challenge that we collaborated with World Bank earlier this year. The World Bank and SSTL, the Singapore Space and Technology Limited, we came together to create a HADR challenge to get technology providers to give us information to augment, real-time flood extents using satellite data to be able to help us to predict and understand, the flooding situation better. So that's the use of space technologies and data in innovation and risk finance. I'll share a little bit, we are one of Asia's we're a non-profit, non-government organization headquartered in Singapore. We connect the ecosystem, we accelerate space technologies, and we cultivate talent for the space and technology sector. One of the mission for SSTL is to use and harness space technology to benefit people, to benefit organizations, and to benefit the planet, which is why earlier this year we embarked on a project with the World Bank to use satellite data and imagery, along with other data sets to provide information on flood extent. These are some of our international partners. I won't bore you with the details. You can find that at our website at www.space.org.sg. So, I don't have much time. I was told I have only 5 minutes. So I wanted to talk to you about the Humanitarian Assistance and Disaster Relief Challenge that was concluded this year. And, it really was to bring shed light on the use of space technology in HADR, because a lot of times we think of HADR as, going down in person, trying to save lives, or, going down in person to look at the destruction, to look at the planning and the, the economic impact that it has. But space technology via satellite provides ubiquitous, access to information and, provides access to information remotely, which is what you need in the times of a disaster, because you can't be there in person. And of course, being able to monitor the weather, certain of this climate data could even play a role eventually, in future in being able to predict the kind of climate change effect or extreme weather conditions that would then cause the disasters in our community. The challenge objective was, to look at the solutions, encourage people to look into space technology, and then, raise awareness and communicate and exchange ideas. Okay, I'm sorry I'm blazing through this. I think we shared this earlier before in another platform. I don't want to waste your time. I wanted to share, of course, you could be familiar that the winner of the challenge was a relatively new space tech startup, Kairos. Kairos is well funded by the French space agency, and they use satellite technology along with other data sets to provide timely, actionable, information. In this case, for organizations to be able to assist with, understanding the flood. So I have a little video about, what they have done. But before I do that, some of the key learnings I wanted to share, which was why it was a very meaningful challenge, was, really tapping onto the new space economy. So the old space, well, there's just space industry as far as I'm concerned, but there are certain times when people talk about the new space economy, which is in the commercialization of the space tech sector. Where many of these developments, IP innovation is now almost open to commercial companies. Anyone who is bright and brilliant could learn to leverage space technologies for benefits, commercial benefits, to benefit people, to benefit the planet, to benefit companies. So, this was a very interesting challenge in being able to tap onto this wave of new space economy, where there are so many bright organizations, big, small, startups coming up with innovative solutions to solve genuine problems. And of course, in promoting tech for good, tech not in just making our lives more convenient, but making our lives better, but, tech as a force for good to be used to save lives and to, and provide a means for people to have a sustainable livelihood. And of course, using satellite in connecting cities remotely. So being able to look at a few data sets from a very big picture perspective, using satellite data to be able to correlate certain information so that we can have actionable information. And of course, without politics and without some kind of bureaucracy or red tape in securing and procuring information. So that was the three positive things, from running such a challenge and being able to raise the awareness and share some of these with, technology sectors, not just in space tech, but in how we use space technology to be able to solve HADR problems. Of course, some of the challenges we've encountered in many of the submissions was the granularity of space data is simply not the most ideal. It is not fine enough. So, which was why also in the challenge statement, we said you could augment it with other data sets, to supplement what you might not have. And certainly with space data and satellite data, there tends to be data lag. Of course, nowadays with AI, machine learning, we're trying to overcome this by being able to come up with a predictive model on what might come in spite of the data lag. So, I wanted to then show you the Keiros's video, just a short while, and then I'll stop there.
Last 5 years has created a lot of different tools and technologies to measure climate resilience and to measure climate-related events around the world. We've started by the flood monitoring tool that I'm going to talk about in a couple of seconds, but we're also working on modeling wildfires, sand encroachment, or landslides. So the flooding monitoring tool that I'm going to talk about today has been created as we started to create it 3 years ago, and we are basically providing for insurance companies, operators on the ground, and governments different kind of data streams. We are first providing information on the live occurrence of flooding events, measuring very precisely the presence of water, as well as the depth itself of the water. This is very important because you can understand that it's very different if you have 2 centimeters of water inside your house or 2 meters of water. So the combination of a 3D model that you can see on the slide here, as well as the detection of water using satellite images and other data sources, can provide to our clients with very high precision, at the same time, the water presence and the water depth. We've been backtesting our technology and in multiple places around the world, and our technology yields a 90% accuracy in measuring both water presence and water depth. I'm going to go now into a small video that will explain a bit more how we conduct and how we do.
I thought it was a bit odd to be sharing a video within a video, so I stopped that. So that's what I have for our sharing on the recent HADR challenge that was concluded, that was done in partnership with the World Bank. We're very grateful to our partners for giving us this opportunity to leverage space technologies to benefit HADR efforts. And of course, in raising the awareness of the difficult climate situation we are having here in Southeast Asia. And stay tuned. And tomorrow we have another session with the World Bank on urban heat island effect. And we are launching the Digital Earth Technology Award. So hope to see you tomorrow as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lynette. It was a very, very interesting story. Apologize again for the tech issues. And I know that some of our participants had difficulties in sending their question, and there's a Q&A feature where you will have to press the red button on the right side, and it will show the Q&A function, and you will be able to submit the question to us to the platform. So now we are coming into the discussion session for today's event. Lynette, I know you will have to leave soon, so maybe the first question I would ask you. Yeah, the HADR challenge show some very innovative applications for how to combine satellite imagery with flood depth information from other sources. And so the question is that, do you anticipate there will be another challenge next year, and what are the areas of most potential to be on the challenge next year, if there is any?
Yes, we have another. So it will be announced tomorrow. In the afternoon. It is a Digital Earth Technology partnership with World Bank. We're moving on to urban heat island effect and looking into using satellite data, thermal infrared satellite data augmented with other data, and of course, open source historical data to look at how to monitor, measure UHI, urban heat island effect on some of these emerging economies in Southeast Asia. So there is an ongoing challenge, and looking forward to all the startups, innovators, even large companies who are now moving aggressively into sustainability information and data, looking forward to your support in this challenge so that we can have good data, good tools to be able to solve some of these challenges arising from climate change that we have here in East Asia.
Thank you, Lynette. Sounds very interesting, and we look forward to tomorrow's session with your event. Thanks again. So we have another question for our speakers today. First of all, for Paul. Paul, you have spoken a lot about how the model has been developed and used for the insurance transaction. But what other additional activities or applications that you could see, this could be useful for from a disaster risk management or climate analytics or post-event perspective?
Thanks. Well, I think the combination of the different things that we've put together here, so the combination of flood model data and Earth observation data is a powerful tool. Both of them have strengths and some limitations, and I think combined that gives you a much better picture of a number of things. So the modelling is useful, as I've described in this situation, to allow you to understand the flooding context. So to look at things that are familiar to the insurance world of exceedance probability curves and put together an understanding of your flood risk context, and then combined with the EO data, that allows you to put in place a monitoring function that is kind of essential for managing these sorts of disaster risk finance schemes. There's also the capability to look further ahead. So there's also flood forecasting capability, and I think that whole sort of package is really valuable in the disaster risk finance and the parametric insurance space. And then building into that some sort of interface to allow users to delve into the data to see what's going on. I think that's really valuable in terms of building capacity, helping end users to be much more part of the sort of story and to understand exactly what's going on and how that's going to impact their situation. For example, when countries can expect payments, when reinsurers see that they might be in a position that that their part of the policy will be triggered as well. So I think there's a lot of different components here that have been brought together that have other valuable uses, maybe wider than disaster risk finance as well, maybe also around anticipatory action. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. That's very, very insightful sharing. So there's another question for Apur. Apur, so recently has been some announcement in the industry about the use of Earth observation data being used to directly trigger risk transfer products without the use of a flood model. So can you share your view on these transactions, and you think that their use in the industry will grow over time? Thanks.
Yes, definitely, Hang. I mean, this is a step forward using the US data for the trigger. And I mean, as long as the industry has confidence in how that triggers is happening, how that data has been utilized, and how the product has been designed based on that data. So I mean, I think that there has to be, as I said, there has to be a balance. I mean, whenever this data is coming in place, the confidence of the market has to be there in those products. And if the technology and these innovative products are well accepted and well, I mean, as I think Lynette actually pointed out in some of her presentation, actually those products could look very exciting. And actually, I mean, one of the products she was mentioning actually was able to go back in the history and were really validated the historical events also. Those types of products are coming. They are enhancing the products and enhancing these technologies. So I think that's the way forward, and that should be very well accepted in the market. And it actually helps, especially in area which we are talking about, where the ground data is very limited and the ground information is very limited. And this type of data, if it's available, it's across the border. I mean, it can capture the globe, So you don't have to be dependent on those ground measurement stations and other things, as long as we have confidence in this type of product. So I'm quite sure that these type of products will grow over a period of time.
Thank you, Apur. And actually, reflecting from the yesterday closed session, then, when we heard from the government of Laos representative, in whom he was saying that he was expecting that, the SEADRIF model could be expanded, to cover other type of flood risk, for example, flash floods, or to cover other type of perils like droughts or typhoons, for example. And also, in the future, to expand to other type of assets, for example, public assets or agricultural assets. So I just wanted to ask all the speakers today, what is your take on that? So what can we do, to respond to those kind of demand from our client countries? So I'd like to invite, first of all, maybe Apur, because you've been with SEADRIF through the transaction, then you can share some of your wisdom about this, how we can respond to the potential demand from these countries.
I mean, in fact, I think that that needs a 2 or 3 pronged approach, what we are trying to achieve here. It's not just, okay, one model shoots everything or one product shoots everything. What we are trying to do, in first instance, I think the flood was picked up as a peril because that was the peak peril that was causing, if you see about Laos, right? In that country, that was the peril which would be causing most of the damages to the houses and population in general. So, so now moving forward, let's say we are talking about agriculture. The flood products can easily, when we are just talking about the flood. Similarly, if we are using the satellite data and we are using certain types of indexes, and there are certain SPIs and a standard precipitation index and all those stuff to trigger it, it can evolve into those as well, or the rainfall index for that matter. It's very, very easy to, it's not very difficult if you have that type of data available in the country. But when we are talking about the public assets for that matter, and then we are talking about some of public infrastructure. So the problem statement actually changes there. What are we trying to do? Are we trying whether an indemnity type of product would be better for that country, where we do a proper modeling, we do a transaction, we have an asset registry for these public assets, because that's what they want to do. Or if they just want some liquidity, and they just want some fast cash, they can go for a simple parametric product as well. So in my opinion, sometimes it's a mix and a hybrid approach, like what Paul was saying in this model approach. It's the satellite data as well as the pure modeling approach, and it's a mix. So sometimes that works better for certain types of products, or certain types of solutions can be more hybrid, where we can cover at least the gaps are filled. So that says, it's a big problem statement, a problem to solve, but there are products and there are solutions which are available for all these. I'm quite sure we can definitely expand into those directions. Yeah.
Thank you, Apur. Paul, can I invite you to give some of the comments on to this?
Absolutely. From a technical perspective, I guess more on the modeling side, I don't think there are any huge limitations to expanding a system like this into other territories or other perils. I think there's a move on the modeling side to approaches that are more modular and more flexible, and certainly that's the way that JBA has been moving in our global flood modeling, so that it's much more straightforward than it used to be to bring in different components, for example, different elements of exposure. If you want to look at public infrastructure, or if you want to look at areas of agricultural land, and use that within a catastrophe model framework, and link it up to a monitoring approach. Similarly, to bring in a different hazard component, whether that's looking at tropical cyclones, perhaps. In some ways, starting with flood modeling here, we've started with one of the more challenging hazards to model. So to move to something like drought I think all the components are in place, and that's a relatively easy move to make, and obviously it could be hugely valuable in some of these countries where that's a significant threat. So yeah, I think there's definitely great opportunity.
Thank you very much, Paul. That sounds very promising. Very good to hear. And maybe finally, I'd like to invite the representative from SEADRIF Insurance Company, maybe Gary, if you are here with us, then also then you can share some of your thoughts about, the company's take on this request from Laos.
Can I just share? Because when developing the first, sorry, am I on? Yes. When developing the first insurance product, there were three things that struck me. First is that the expertise, the domain knowledge, it is so deep. So we have JBA, we have Guy Carpenter. We were not that close to the reinsurers, right? But I mean, the way that they work on the domain knowledge part, I mean, it's just amazing. Such kind of professionals. And so I think there's a lot of comfort because of the domain knowledge that we have in having them as our partners. And of course, that means that the teamwork, we had to go through quite a few iterations. I think also that there were changes and they were able to find a solution and come back very quickly. And that means that the people who are able to work on this has to be very open-minded. Open-minded to new solutions, open-minded to exploring alternatives. So that's actually the second point. And it's really about all these soft skills type and in addition to the domain knowledge. The third thing which is important is communications part. After we have developed the product, we have placed the reinsurance, the communications work that we had to do was a very key part of what we had to do. So what you see on our website now with FAQs is actually not an easy job because we had to reduce very complex concepts and applications to language that whoever reads our website can understand in terms of the FAQ, right? And others. So in terms of the communication and even in terms of if something were to happen, hasn't happened yet, but it will happen. And then there is a payout. How is that going to communicate? How is the payment going to make? Because under the contract itself, we have 5 working days to pay the finite portion and 10 working days to pay for the parametric portion. So on our part, actually, we also have to make sure that things move very, very quickly and another lot of teamwork together with including our client country. Gary, would you like to add some more?
Well, I think you've covered most of the points, Soo-Hoon, and I think your emphasis on communication is absolutely correct. I think the work that SEADRIF needs to do is to engage very closely with the client countries and to understand exactly what their requirements are. I mean, picking up the points from Paul and Aparov, that really we need to be very clear whether it's a parametric type solution that's required or whether it's more of the indemnity type insurance. And from what we've gathered so far, it's likely to be a combination of the two. It's not likely to be one or the other. So I think from an insurance point of view,
I think we lost Gary for a moment.
Yeah.
our work really is going to be, sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, now I think we lost you for a second, Gary. Can you please repeat that?
Yes, I was just saying, I think that from our discussions so far, what comes through is probably we're going to need to have a blended product, if you like, or a product that can respond in a very flexible way to a requirement which is possibly best met by a parametric insurance. But I don't think, there's been a lot of emphasis recently on parametric, and I think it's a wonderful tool, but it doesn't really hit every spot there's still very much a role, I think, for the indemnity type insurance. What's exciting, I think, is that I think what we're getting from the speakers and the people who are much more technically accomplished than I am, that the technology is there, that basically we can pretty much do everything now. So Sehun says it's a communication issue, and it's really talking to the countries, understanding what they want, explaining to them the options, and then our job is to try to ensure that there are good structures to respond. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gary and Sohun, for your sharing. So we've come to the end of our session today. So I think after the 2 days of the closed session yesterday and today, then we learned a lot, from the discussion and the presentation and sharing from our speakers, and also as well as the lively discussion through the 2 sessions. I think that the most important is that, we learned how we could potentially improve the model using the innovations in the industry for better assessment of the risk that will ultimately help SEADRIF Insurance Company and our client countries to obtain more cost-efficient coverage from the markets. And also, maximizing financial protection for our beneficiary countries is also what we're trying to do at the bank together with SEADRIF and the private sector partners. And another important lesson learned is that the partnership between the public and the private sector is crucial to deliver the success of these type of projects and product. And to this end, I'd like to congratulate the SEADRIF Insurance Company, for the successful first transaction, and has been serving as the platform to crowd in private sector expertise and also private capital. So it's really important, experience that we can leverage and build on for our next journeys, in ensuring the financial resilience for our client country. So, yeah, so these are the two main takeaways for me today, from the sessions and today and yesterday. So thank you all for your participation and your sharings, and we look forward to working with you in the future. And again, apologize for the technologies issue today. And thank you so much to the organizing team. You've done a fantastic job, to help us over the past few days for the 2 sessions. And thank you again. And have a great evening or afternoon and morning to you all. Thank you very much.